Hi, Gert Baker for Woolwich Cable TV Channel 12, and I'd like to introduce you to Carroll Morse, who is known as a Woolwich Tower Clockman. Would you like to explain how you come about getting that name?
Oh, I got that name from the town uh, fathers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They called me that because of this do, the doing the town clock, so
Mm-hmm.
to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Is this running now?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah. How you came about getting it? We'd like to know how you came about acquiring the clock.
Well, I've been going around the state for some years now.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, almost 20, and taking pictures of the main tower clocks. This is a thing that the Maine chapter
Mm-hmm.
of the NAWCC
Mm-hmm.
was doing as a 1976 bicentennial
Mm-hmm.
project, which was unusual. And a census of the tower clocks in Maine was decided to be a good project since nobody knew how many there were.
Mm-hmm.
And it was thought maybe there were 35 or so still existing from old times. And it turned out with people from the chapter in all the counties checking out that there were almost 100 of them.
Wow.
And then even at that, there were some that were overlooked for a while. And that was one of the things that got me going about the state,
Mm-hmm.
taking pictures, climbing towers, and finding out where the ones were that were missed and the ones that had information that wasn't quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to have these things happen when you're checking up on
Yes.
something that's many years old, maybe 100 years or more. And so that was fun for me. And over the years, I've been working at it, still am, and hope to make a sequel to this 1976 census, updated and corrected, and whatever else needs to be done to make it uh, current. One clock has moved out of state, at least, and went to Florida. Another one has come into the state and been installed up in Phillips in the church.
Mm-hmm.
So we lose and we gain.
So how did you come about finding this clock here that we now have on our
Well, I was
building?
on that, I guess you'd call it tour at Coney High School,
Mm-hmm.
checking out the clock there. That was one that was missed in the high school building on the circle. There's one dial clock that is now electrified, but was originally in the old school there, which was the Coney Female Academy,
Mm-hmm.
a one dial mechanical clock. Now it's been electrified and has a history of its own. But I was talking clocks with the gentleman that gave us the tour up to the clock movement,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, "I know where there's a clock," and it was in the basement of the old Nash School in Augusta. I decided I had to see it, so we arranged a time to go and look at it, and I was delighted to find how much was left of this clock that had been installed in 1897 in the Nash School clock tower. For some reason, it was stored after uh, a period of use, probably 25, 30, maybe more years, but not a great many, I gather from the appearance of the clock. And I found that it was owned by the state at that point because they had bought the building and everything in it. So the next move was to find out about acquiring it. And of course, such things go first to towns or educational facility. Well, not first to the towns, first to these other departments of the state. I figured the museum might want it. So I waited to hear what the verdict would be. I guess you might call it
With
that.
crossed fingers.
And the museum decided it wasn't something they could use, at least at that time. And then the next step would be towns or cities or educational institutions, I guess, following the towns or cities.
Yeah.
And I figured that it would be a great thing for Woolwich to have a town clock. So I applied for the town clock, a town to receive it as a town clock. This had to be done through the state representatives and the city representatives, selectmen, and so forth. And it was accomplished. In April of 1979, the deal was done, and I brought the pieces to my house and started in restoring the Nash School clock as it was originally. It had green frame. It had red spokes and the brass rims on the wheel, brass wheels they are. And it was kind of a handsome little machine. And it had the gear cluster at the top to reach to the several dials. It had the motion works that go behind the dials were still there. The pendulum bob was there, and even the pendulum rod, which is wooden and would very likely be lost. There was weights that went with it, the weight hook, and even the cable on the drum, which was kind of old and rusty, but still useful.
Obviously, somebody took a lot of care in making sure all the stuff was stayed together.
The care had been kind of relaxed because the pendulum had rolled off out into the next room, and the weights were nearby, and the movement itself was quite intact. And well, that's the way it was. Some things were missing. The pulleys had long gone, and the legs had been taken from the movement itself. They're special because they have to be very stiff. Tower clock will begin to rock if the pendulum swings, which is quite heavy, and there'll be a sympathetic vibration, I guess you'd call it, set up, and that'll stop the clock. So I arranged a sturdy wooden base for it, which is in present use. The hands were all there, but they were weather worn, and so that was one of my long jobs of restoration, was to get those. The original ones are on it today. And they have had a lot of weathering on the face of them. Always a protected area, it's interesting to find out, is smoother and less weather worn than the outside, the one facing weather. It's quite surprising how much the weather will eat away at the paint or wood, whatever is exposed to the elements. Then there was, let's see.
Well, the request for the town of Woolwich had to be put in.
That was done.
That was already in 1982 from the town.
Well,
to be put on the municipal.
In 79.
In 79. Okay, 79. Okay.
And so I brought the thing home and I started putting it together. Oh, not putting it together, cleaning it, and restoring it with the same color paint that was on it originally, and oiling and working with it until it was all ready to. Well, I did run it. I ran it in my shop. Of course, it didn't have the hands on there. because there were no dials and no place to put the motion works, which goes right behind the dials.
Yeah.
It was a fun thing to do, somewhat dirty
I'm
because
sure, yeah.
there was old grease on it and
Yeah.
the dust and all.
Did you have much trouble
accumulation.
finding some of the parts that were missing that you had to replace?
Well,
I mean, you must have.
Later,
some-
we had to replace the pulleys. They're presently scarce and expensive to hard to get in the beginning, and also a little bit hard to pay for too. So we got those, and I had to have a weight guide made because the demand today is for a self-winder. And although that's not absolutely foolproof or anything, you do have to have people to give a clock some attention because it's a machine that runs and needs oil and checking and all the rest.
Yes, like any.
So, but anyway, I lost my track.
It's okay.
The winder, the
one.
weights go in a cage, a weight guide, and that weight guide controls the weight from just moving around. And the reason mainly for them is to keep them so that the automatic switches will be tripped when the weights fall, signaling "wind me." And the little unit will kick in then and wind until it goes to the top, and the shut-off stop switch actuates, and then the power to the motor is gone and it stops.
So basically it kind of takes care of itself.
The main thing at the top, winding, if that switch should miss or fail or fall apart or anything, and the thing kept going, it would wreck the clock. So there's a safety switch beyond the shut-off switch, which will do the same thing if necessary. Hopefully it never will be.
Yes.
And that will protect the clock from damage.
Well, that goes to maintaining it. Now, how far up is it from like the floor to where the clock is? You said it's like a 30-foot ladder.
You mean from downstairs?
To maintain it, yeah. How you go about maintaining it and actually getting to it.
To get to the clock presently, it of course, the clock house was set on top of the hose tower. That ladder goes up from the floor elevation of the firehouse, where the fire trucks are, goes up 30 feet. You have to climb 30 feet to a balcony, where they have the balconies there for the men to hang or adjust the hoses that they've hoisted up to drain.
Yes.
Okay, the only access possible to the clock house was through a trap door, which had to be made in this roof that we manufactured in the firehouse to start in with the whole clock house. So that's about 10 more feet from the little balcony up to the floor of the clock house. So you have a climb of 30 feet and then a rest point and 10 more feet
and
to your goal.
Yeah, and the space around the clock is not much space.
Well,
Yes, and you were saying like 30 feet up, and once you actually get up in there, how much room is up in there with all the...
Well, the clock house is roughly 9 or 10 feet square, and the inside you have a good 9-foot area that's open. Of course, the clock itself takes up the center of the clock house. There is the winder and the weight guide, which is on one side of it, and other interference would be the 3 drives that go out just about head high, so they're good skull crackers. But they go to the motion works, which is actually the center of the dials. And of course, the less difference in elevation, which would be taken care of by universal joints, is it's better not to have any if you can help it. So it was designed to be straight out from the clock, and whatever variations do occur will be handled by universal joint. And also there is a device to take care of expansion and contraction, which will be bound to happen when hot summer days make it like an oven in the clock house, and then cold winter days when the breeze down the lake will put it down below 0.
Yes, exactly,
and that's where we have, fortunately, a compensated pendulum that will also work to benefit that situation.
You do you have an apprentice, somebody you're kind of showing how to do this, or somebody that's not afraid of heights or claustrophobic?
Someone that's not afraid of heights and is very interested is Jeff Garvin. He's a member of the fire department and has a good access to the operation. So I think he would be excellent if we've got to have a little mentoring here, I think, to clue him in on some of the things that are necessary to do to keep things going well. And I intend to do that as soon as possible. There's a few things to finish in the clock house, more like accessories, trapdoor, counterweight, and things like that would be much more convenient than the present situation with it. And so we'll get together soon and we'll see how he feels about it then.
And probably ought to make mention about the Grange and some of the donations that have been towards the clock being.
The first people who were really interested, it seemed, were the Grange folks, and they had some baked bean suppers and things and raised the most money in one group that was received. Later on, and also it was publicized, and people gave direct donations to me and for the clock account. And then later on, I wrote some letters because we didn't have enough money to really go ahead, and that was mildly successful. And there were more people, and the individuals gave, and some from far away even. And there are still people interested in the clock, and
the maintenance
I think they're happy to see it going.
A huge thank you to them, yes, and you.
So they were the ones that kept the encouragement going to get it done.
Yes. So do you want to explain a couple of these here, or do you want to?
Well, we have some pictures here that we can talk about. This one is a base of the clock house, as I've labeled it. We made the floor of the clock house become an insulated ceiling for the hose tower, since the old roof had to be removed. And this was built in the firehouse thanks to the generosity of the fire chief and his willingness to help us out. And the clock house was built with sides that will become the dials. I think that is on the side. I'm not sure. Oh, that's okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We'll just keep going.
The walls became the dials of the clock, and that is an inside view of the first step in installing the movement right in the middle of the clock house for benefit of the straight drives to the dials.
And this one.
The dials were made up with swinging circular lines to get the minute marks in the right places, and the numerals in the right places that would look right. And it took a lot of pieces to put all these three dials together.
Which way is which one?
That is 9.
Okay.
Goes this way.
All right. Get these in order here. Okay.
The first numerals were applied to see how it would look. The hands were on, so we'd get the benefit of that. They've been restored. And so, of course, that was temporary because we had to get 3 dials made up with all the numerals. And this was accomplished. The square in the dial is an access door to be able to, later on, to work with the hands if necessary, get them set in the right positions and see where they were without too much dependency on someone with ladders and the ability to get up there and work outside the tower, which is not easy.
This is some of your crew here. You have.
This is some of the crew as we moved the clock house out of the firehouse. The roof, of course, couldn't go on because there was no room for the material to be put in place. And so we rolled it out. There was as much clock house as we could get built inside. And out it went for, in the 20th of November, it was moved out and rolled around the corner. We hoped we might get the entire roof on, but unfortunately it had to be wrapped up in tarpaulins and kept all winter with only some of the roof structure holding up the tarpaulins. The spring came, and then the opportunity for the cranes to lift it up, so we had a rush job of getting the roof rafters on and the roof itself and the shingling done and all the things that would be difficult up in the air there. And you see here pictures of the progress of the roof. Shingling was being done there, and then it was lifted up, and this a considerable amount of crane work was done to swing it into place in the middle of March. Here we have some inside views of the clock house with the clock movement. This next one will show the clock winder down low and the weight guide with the switches. The clock is just as it was 100 years ago as far as the mechanics of it. And the good thing about it is the winder could be completely removed if necessary, and there's nothing done to spoil the antiquity of it. And it's been restored with its proper paint colors, and just as George M. Stevens Company in Boston made it. The weight guide is shown here, which keeps those weights where they belong, and so they'll properly hit the switches. And the weights, of course, require cable and pulleys, and here are the 2 pulleys that we have. They're old-fashioned, hard to find, and these were recovered from someplace, and I have cleaned them all up and painted them very nicely, and they're black and workable. This is the completion of the lifting of the clock house, and allowed us to go ahead with all the rest of the interior work. There is, after it was set on the building, and here we have some, and the hands have been put on. The clock is ready to run, and that is staging that will eventually come down that's beside it. There's a final, not the final view, but a view of the clock house on the building as it is completed. And then we have a little neighborhood view of it, historical society in the foreground and the clock house sticking up above it in the background and making an interesting picture of community progress.
This is absolutely wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this, or fill us in on, or is that pretty much?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm extremely pleased that the people were enthusiastic and continued to say, "Where's the clock?" when it wasn't in view.
Yes.
And encouraging, and that we were blessed by having enough money arranged in the final days to take the step of going ahead with putting it up and completing the job. And one of the great pleasures is and happiness to me is to have the clock function as well as it's been doing. It seems to be a well-regulated affair. Had to do a little adjusting, and I was amazed at how little. So I'm very pleased with the whole thing, and I'm happy to see the thing as a town landmark now.
Yes, exactly. Well, on behalf of Woolwich Cable TV, I'd like to thank you for sharing your coming about of the clock, whatnot, and all that comes with it. And on behalf of Woolwich Cable TV Channel 12, I'd like to thank you for watching.